I've been driving trucks for almost a decade. The open road, the hum of the engine, the way the world shrinks to just you and the highway. It's always been my escape. But in the spring of 2024, one run turned my life upside down. What started as a routine haul ended with me questioning everything I thought I knew about the job, the people I trusted, and the cargo I carried. This is my story, and every word is true. I was 32, working for a mid-sized trucking company out of Memphis. The pay was decent, the routes were long, and the bosses didn't ask too many questions as long as you delivered on time. I was good at my job, kept my logs clean, my rig in shape, and my mouth shut. That's the unwritten rule of trucking. Don't poke your nose where it doesn't belong. But sometimes, trouble finds you anyway. It was April when I got the call from my dispatcher, Ray. He had a last-minute job: pick up a load in Little Rock, Arkansas, and deliver it to a warehouse in Tulsa, Oklahoma by the next morning. The pay was double my usual rate, which raised my eyebrows. "What's the catch?" I asked. Ray laughed it off, saying the shipper was just in a rush. The load was listed as general freight, boxes of electronics, nothing special. I'd hauled similar loads 100 times. Still, something about Ray's tone felt off, like he was reading from a script. I drove to Little Rock that afternoon, pulling into an industrial park on the edge of town. The shipper's lot was small, just a single warehouse with a dented metal door and a couple of guys in coveralls waiting by the dock. They didn't talk much, just handed me the paperwork and loaded the trailer in under 20 minutes. I noticed they were quick to seal the trailer, slapping on a heavy-duty padlock before I could even glance inside. "High-value cargo," one of them muttered when I asked. I signed the forms, hooked up, and hit the road. It was 6 p.m., and I had about a 4-hour drive to Tulsa. The first hour was fine. I cruised along Interstate 40, the Arkansas hills fading into dusk. My CB radio was quiet, and I had a playlist of old country tunes to keep me company. But as I crossed into Oklahoma, I started to feel uneasy. It wasn't anything I could pinpoint, just a tightness in my chest, like I was being watched. I checked my mirrors, but the highway was empty except for a pair of headlights a mile back. Probably another trucker. I told myself I was being paranoid. The extra pay was messing with my head, making me think there was more to this run than there was. Around 9 p.m., I stopped at a gas station to refuel and grab a coffee. The place was one of those rundown joints, with flickering fluorescent lights and a clerk who looked half asleep. As I filled my tank, I noticed a black SUV parked across the lot, its engine running. 2 guys sat inside, their faces shadowed. They didn't get out, didn't pump gas, just sat there. I kept an eye on them while I checked my trailer. The padlock was still on, the seal intact. Everything looked fine, but the SUV gave me a bad feeling. I got back in the cab and pulled out, watching my mirrors. Sure enough, the SUV followed, keeping its distance but matching my speed. My heart started to race. I'd heard stories about cargo theft, guys getting jumped at rest stops, their trailers stripped before they could blink. But this didn't feel like a random hit. The way the SUV hung back, never getting too close, was too deliberate. I turned up the CB, hoping to hear other drivers nearby, but the channel was dead. I tried calling Ray, but his phone went straight to voicemail. That's when I knew something was wrong. Ray always picked up, even in the middle of the night. I kept driving, my eyes flicking between the road and the SUV in my mirrors. They stayed with me for 30 miles, never making a move, but never falling back. My mind raced through possibilities. Was the cargo stolen? Was I hauling something illegal? I thought about the shipper's rush, the heavy padlock, Ray's weird tone. I'd never opened a sealed trailer, its grounds for firing, and I wasn't about to start. But the urge to check was overwhelming. I needed to know what I was carrying, what was worth tailing me for. I spotted a truck stop near Okmulgee and decided to pull in. It was busy, with a dozen rigs parked and a 24-hour diner buzzing with drivers. I figured the crowd would deter whoever was in the SUV. I parked under a bright floodlight, locked the cab, and walked the trailer, pretending to check the tires. The SUV didn't follow me into the lot, but I saw it idling on the highway shoulder, just out of sight. My hands were shaking as I climbed back into the cab. I grabbed my tire thumper, a solid piece of oak I kept for protection, and sat there, watching the mirrors. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Keep driving. Don't stop again." My stomach dropped. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. Who the hell was this? How did they have my number? I typed a reply. "Who is this?" But before I could send it, another text came through. "Tulsa by midnight. No cops." I threw the phone onto the passenger seat like it was on fire. This wasn't just cargo theft. This was something bigger, something I'd stumbled into without knowing. I thought about calling the police, but the text stopped me. No cops. If I was carrying something illegal, drugs, weapons, anything, I could be implicated just for hauling it. I'd seen stories about drivers taking the fall for shady loads, their lives ruined over someone else's crime. But I couldn't keep driving blind, not with that SUV trailing me and those texts burning a hole in my pocket. I needed answers. Against every instinct, I decided to check the trailer. I waited until the lot was quiet, then grabbed a pair of bolt cutters I kept for emergencies. My hands were slick with sweat as I approached the trailer doors. The padlock was heavy, but the cutters snapped it clean. I glanced around. No one was watching. The SUV was still on the highway, its lights dim. I pulled the doors open just enough to slip inside, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The trailer was packed with cardboard boxes, stacked floor to ceiling. I pried one open, expecting electronics like the paperwork said. Instead, I found tightly wrapped bundles of cash. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more, in neat stacks of hundreds. My knees went weak. I checked another box, more cash. A third box had something else, small plastic bags filled with white powder. I didn't need to be a cop to know what it was. This wasn't general freight. This was a smuggling run, and I was the mule. Panic hit me like a wave. I closed the boxes, shut the trailer, and climbed back into the cab, my mind spinning. Who set this up? Ray? The shipper? Someone higher up? I thought about dumping the load and running, but I was already in too deep. The SUV, the texts, they knew who I was, where I was. If I bailed, they'd come for me. If I delivered, I was complicit. I was trapped. I started the engine and pulled out, the SUV falling in behind me like a shadow. The last hour to Tulsa was the longest of my life. Every mile, I expected sirens, a roadblock, or worse. Those guys in the SUV making their move. My phone stayed silent, but I could feel the weight of their eyes on me. When I reached the warehouse in Tulsa, it was just past midnight. The place was dark. No workers. No other trucks. Just a single man in a black jacket, waiting by the dock. He didn't say a word, just pointed to the unloading bay. I backed in, my hands trembling on the wheel. The man opened the trailer, and within minutes, a crew appeared, unloading the boxes with practiced efficiency. I stayed in the cab, my thumper in my lap, watching them in the mirrors. The man in the jacket approached my window and slid an envelope through the gap. "Good job," he said, his voice flat. "Forget this run. Forget us." I didn't open the envelope until they were gone. Inside was $10,000 in cash and a note. "Stay quiet." I drove back to Memphis in a daze, the money hidden under my seat. I didn't tell Ray, didn't call the cops. I quit the company the next week, claiming a family emergency. I burned the note and spent the cash on a used car, trying to wash the guilt away. But I can't forget. Every time I pass a truck stop, every time I hear a diesel engine, I think about that run. I think about the men in the SUV, the man in the jacket, the boxes I wasn't supposed to see. I wonder who they were, what they're doing now, and if they're still watching me. I don't drive trucks anymore. I work in a warehouse now, moving boxes that don't hide secrets. I've driven this interstate 100 times, but one night, a single trucker turned my routine into a nightmare. My name's Lily, and I'm a long-haul driver. You could say it's a lonely life, but you get used to it. The road's all you really need, right? Or at least, that's what I thought. Late one night, as I was making a delivery, I started hearing these strange transmissions on the CB radio. Nothing malicious, just off. Like someone was talking about me. But I didn't think much of it at the time. Truckers are a weird bunch, right? So, I pushed it out of my mind and focused on the road. I had miles to go, and the hum of the engine, the steady rhythm of the tires on the asphalt, was all I needed to keep going. But that night, something changed. Something I couldn't ignore. The air had that heavy, still quality to it as I drove through the night. The miles seemed to melt away under the truck's tires, a steady hum in the background as I focused on the road. I was making a late-night delivery, heading down Route 66. I'd driven this stretch countless times, but that night, something felt off. Maybe it was the silence of the road, the fact that it was late, or maybe it was just me being paranoid. I brushed it off, put the pedal to the metal, and kept going. That's when I first heard it. The static on the CB radio flickered. A few voices, typical trucker chatter. But then I heard something different. It wasn't much, just a few words that seemed to be aimed at me. CB radio voice. "Hey there, Lily. Long haul tonight?" I froze for a second. I hadn't said my handle out loud. No one should have known I was out here. I quickly checked my radio. No one had interrupted the channel. It was like the voice had come from nowhere. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe a fellow driver heard my truck's radio. Truckers have a way of knowing things. But I couldn't shake the feeling. I wasn't sure why, but I decided to keep my eyes on the road, a little more vigilant than usual. Not long after, I decided to stop at a 24-hour diner off the highway. A quick break, some coffee, stretch my legs for a bit. The truck stop was quiet, with only a few rigs parked outside under the dim lights. I pulled up and parked my rig, feeling a strange sense of being watched. It was the kind of diner where truckers go to rest, but tonight, something felt different. I went inside, ordered a coffee, and took a seat at the counter. As I sat there, I noticed something strange. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A truck, parked right outside. A big rig with distinctive markings, white with red stripes down the side. I hadn't seen it before, but as I watched, I realized it looked like the same truck I had passed a few miles back. It was parked at the diner, but the odd part? The driver was sitting inside, just staring out at me through the window. I didn't think much of it at first. Truckers are always looking out for each other, right? But as I waited for my coffee, I saw him watching me. His eyes never moved. I tried to shake it off. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. As I finished my coffee, I heard him ask the waitress about my route. "She's headed to Amarillo," he said, looking directly at me now. A cold chill ran through me. Why would he ask her about me? It wasn't like I was a regular here. The waitress didn't seem to notice. She just nodded and smiled. I couldn't shake the feeling though. I paid for my coffee, hurried out the door, and jumped back into my rig. But as I started my engine, I saw the trucker's headlights flicker to life, following me down the road. As I pulled onto the highway, I tried to focus on the road ahead, but that feeling kept gnawing at me. Something wasn't right. My eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, and there he was. The same truck. Still behind me. Not passing. Just following. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was just a coincidence. After all, we're all heading in the same direction, right? But the longer I drove, the more it started to feel like more than just a coincidence. Then, the voice came through the CB again. The same voice. It wasn't just static anymore. It was clear. CB radio voice. "You got a man waiting at home?" I froze. How did he know that? I hadn't said a word to anyone. My hands gripped the wheel harder. I glanced in the mirror. The headlights of his rig were right there. Too close. Too steady. Never passing. Just following. I tried to shake him. I took an exit, then another. I drove down back roads I knew would be empty, but no matter what I did, his truck was right behind me. Always there, always keeping the same pace. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I was desperate. But the dispatcher just told me there was nothing they could do unless he did something illegal. "Maybe he's just going the same way," she said. "Maybe you're just paranoid." But I wasn't paranoid. I knew something was wrong. I finally pulled into a truck stop, locked the doors, and tried to calm myself down. I watched him park across from me. He got out of his rig and walked toward my truck. He knocked on my window, smiling like we were old friends. "You're a hard woman to keep up with," he said. I didn't say anything. I just pretended to call someone. Anything to get him to leave. But he didn't go. He stood there, waiting, watching me. I could feel my breath catch in my throat. I checked my GPS. My heart sank. Someone had been tracking me. My system showed movements, like it was following me. It wasn't just his truck. It was the whole damn system. My Bluetooth had been hacked. My truck had been compromised. I couldn't stay there. I had to get out. I drove to the nearest gas station, hoping it was busy enough for me to hide. I begged the clerk to let me hide in the back. He agreed, but my mind kept racing. What if he came in after me? What if he was already there, watching? I crouched down, peeking through the door. Moments later, I heard his footsteps. He walked into the gas station, casual as could be. He went up to the counter, acting like nothing was wrong. He lingered by the counter, scanning the room. I stayed out of sight, my heart pounding in my chest. He asked the clerk if he'd seen a woman with a rig. He wanted to know where I went. The clerk must have called the cops because they arrived shortly after. The trucker left quickly, but he was still calm. He played it off like it was nothing. The next morning, I went out to check on my truck. I couldn't believe what I saw. My rig was vandalized. Scratches, deep gouges in the side of the cab, and a note. A simple note, stuck to my windshield. It read, "Next time, I won't stop knocking." I couldn't do it anymore. I quit trucking. The fear, the uncertainty, the knowledge that he could be anywhere. It was too much. The road no longer felt like my home. It felt like a prison. Months later, I saw the news. Another woman, another trucker, missing on the same route, same highway. It was 3:17 a.m., and the rain was pouring down hard against my windshield. I was on Highway 83, somewhere south of Amarillo, Texas. The road stretched out before me in an endless line of headlights, the storm obscuring everything else. My truck hummed steadily, and I could feel my eyelids growing heavy after hours of driving. I had another 2 hours to go before I could stop, and I was trying to stay focused. I didn't expect to see her. At first, I thought she was just a blur in the rain, but as I got closer, I realized it was a woman. Barefoot, drenched in a yellow dress, her arms flailing out like someone who'd lost control. I told myself to keep going. I've been on this road long enough to know better than to stop for strangers, especially on a night like this. But when I saw the fear in her eyes, really saw it, I couldn't ignore it. It was raw, desperate, and for some reason, it made me stop. I pulled over to the side of the road. She didn't hesitate. She got into the truck as soon as I unlocked the door, and without a word, I started driving again. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, but I couldn't turn her away either. Her scent hit me right away. Something sharp, almost like bleach. But there was something else underneath it. I couldn't place it, but it made my stomach twist. I kept my eyes on the road, trying to make small talk, but she wasn't having it. After a long, tense silence, she finally spoke. "They're watching you," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "You're being scored." I didn't know what to make of that. What was she talking about? She seemed distant, like she was either too scared or too tired to speak normally. "They have people like me set up on these roads," she continued. "It's part of a game." I glanced at her, trying to keep my focus on the road. "What kind of game?" She looked over at me, her face pale in the dim light. "They test drivers," she said. "The first few seconds after you see me. What you do next. The questions you ask. They track it all." I shook my head. "You're not making sense." "5 points if you call the cops," she said, her eyes darting around like she was watching for something. 3 points if you just take me to a motel. But if you notice anything strange about me, you lose points." I didn't know what to think. She was talking in riddles, and I was starting to feel more and more uncomfortable. "You're the 12th person this month," she added, her voice growing more urgent. "The first 11. They all disappeared." I tried to process what she was saying. What did she mean by disappeared? Why did she sound so sure of it? "You don't have to worry," she said, almost reassuringly. "Just don't make the wrong choice." I didn't say anything. My mind was racing. Who was she? And what kind of game was she talking about? The whole situation felt wrong, like I was being tested somehow. We didn't speak much after that, but as we drove on, I kept glancing at her. There was something unsettling about her calm demeanor in the midst of all the chaos. Her eyes seemed empty, like she was lost in some far-off thought. We eventually stopped at a gas station. The storm hadn't let up, and the flickering lights of the station made everything feel eerie. I got out to fill up, and she stayed in the truck, staring ahead. That's when I noticed something strange on the ground next to the pumps. A Ziploc bag. Curious. I picked it up. Inside, I found several wigs, neatly folded. A chill ran down my spine. But there was something else that made my heart skip a beat. A burner phone, tucked underneath the wigs. I pulled it out and saw the messages that made everything click. New target. White Volvo number 7163. 3 points. Asked about family. Liquidate 7163. Driver took pics. The words made my blood run cold. This wasn't some game. These people weren't just testing drivers. They were targeting them. And now I was involved. I couldn't make sense of it. I had to get out of here. I turned to go back to the truck, but as I did, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. More men in uniforms walking toward my truck. They were wearing what looked like official Department of Transportation gear. My gut told me something was off. I tried to stay calm, but the situation was spiraling out of control. They were asking for my logbook, demanding to see everything. I couldn't understand why they were being so aggressive, but then it happened. The woman in the truck suddenly turned on me, accusing me of kidnapping her. I froze. What was happening? She was frantic, pointing at me, saying I had forced her into the truck. Her accusations felt unreal, but what scared me the most was hearing my own voice through a speaker hidden somewhere, saying something I hadn't said. The voice came through loud and clear. She looked easy to overpower. I panicked. I didn't know how this was happening, but I knew I had to get out of there. I managed to escape, barely, and I didn't stop until I was sure I was safe. My mind was racing, trying to piece everything together. What had I stumbled into? Who were these people? I learned later that the entire operation was much larger than I had realized. The whole thing was part of a human trafficking ring. They used people like her to bait drivers and test how far they would go. The woman I had picked up wasn't just a victim. She was a pawn in their game. I didn't know it at the time, but my truck had been tampered with during its last service. A hidden compartment had been installed without my knowledge. I had been set up. As for the woman, she wasn't found alive. Her body was discovered the next day, but the authorities couldn't make sense of it all. The story they gave made no sense. But I knew the truth. I had almost been another victim in a game I couldn't escape. Now, I keep a $20 bill soaked in fentanyl in my glove box. If I ever see yellow again on the roadside, I'm swallowing it first.